it's me, Chelsea, and today we've decided to make a storytime video talking about my experience of being pregnant while in university. This story goes back to 2015 when I was only 20 years old in my final year of my undergrad. Hamza and I had just moved in together. Before then, he would drive up in the middle of the night to come see me, and it was absolutely amazing. And going into my final year, I was like, I love you, let's live together. And we ended up doing that, and it was really great. But he sacrificed a lot to come and live with me, and at the time, like, we were so excited that we didn't realize how big of a change it was. He left his family and his friends, and he ended up quitting his job back home to come live with me. So he found another job in the city, and it was a big change for him because he didn't know anyone aside from me, and I literally had like 3 friends. Like, I wasn't that social. I like to hang out in my room and do my studies, and yeah, that was basically my university experience. So at that time, it was around September, and I started to notice a few changes in my body, as well as I was 3 weeks late for my period. But Hamza and I, we didn't really take it too seriously since I had just had my wisdom teeth removed, and my doctor had told me that I should be getting my period a little bit later on. It would be regular because of the medication that I was on. So we didn't think much of it at the time. That I had very strong heat flashes. I would get extremely hot, and we live in Canada, so it was like the cooler season, and I would just feel like I'm burning up from the inside out, and it was not great. Like, I'd have them in the middle of the night. I also was extremely nauseous. I would be throwing up randomly, and I assumed that it was from a stomach ulcer that I had at that time as well too. There was a combination of things that made me not actually believe that I could be pregnant. I also was very moody. Like, I feel so bad for Hamza at the time because I was a bitch. Not necessarily towards him, just in general. Like, with my friends, I was moody. With my teachers, I was moody. With everyone, I just wasn't the nicest person, and I didn't feel like it was me that was causing it. I felt like it was definitely hormonal. So yeah, Hamza and I still, after all those signs, we didn't take it seriously, which was kind of bad. And one day, oh, and I had horrible cravings. Like, I would want the greasiest, saltiest, sweetest, random things, like, at all hours of the day and night. I would leave class early to go and get a brownie. Like, it was like, I probably should have picked up on something, but I was too clueless. I didn't really think much of it. One night, and fast forward, it was October now, so we waited an entire month of my hormones and heat flashes and just aggressiveness. Still no period. And one day we went down to the dollar store just to get snacks, since I was always craving things, and it was a Friday night, and I just wanted to get my fix in, Skittles and chocolate and all that. So I ended up saying to Hamza, just as a joke, oh babe, we should get one of these dollar store tests just to see, like, maybe I'm pregnant, maybe I'm not. So we picked up 2 of those, and we went back to the apartment, had our snacks, ate our food. I honestly forgot that we had bought the tests altogether. After dinner, I was like, oh, I should probably try one of these out, see what happens. And even then, I was laughing with him. Like, I just did not take it seriously. It was horrible. Yeah, so I didn't take it seriously, and I went and did the first test in the washroom, and it came back positive. And I said, babe, like, this one came back positive, but maybe then again, it is from the dollar store, you don't know the quality of it, I'll do the other one. So went to the washroom again, did the same thing. A couple minutes later, came back positive as well. So then I started to feel like, okay, maybe I actually am. I still, like, I was so naive. I was like, no, I'm not pregnant. This test says positive, but it's not right. And yeah, so after that, Hamza's like, no babe, like, we should go and get one that's foolproof. We went to the Shoppers, and we spent about $45 on the highest, most recommended brands of pregnancy tests, even though I had 2 already telling me that I was pregnant. Still didn't believe I was pregnant, and we went back to the apartment after that, and I got these expensive tests, used the first one, and it came back saying that I was pregnant. And at that point, I kind of went into shock, but I still was like, okay, I'm gonna take this last one, and if 4 out of 4 say that I'm pregnant, then I'm pregnant. So yeah, that one came back pregnant as well, and I went to Hamza, and I was overwhelmed. Like, the only feeling that I can explain, like, how I felt in that moment when I had 4 pregnancy tests telling me that I was pregnant, I just felt extremely overwhelmed with happiness, shock, confusion, just all kinds of feelings. It was a lot on me, and I went from feeling like nothing in the world, like I didn't have to be responsible for anything in the world aside from finishing my semester, getting honors, and figuring out the next step in our life together, to starting a family together. So Hamza said, okay, you should call your mom. And when I feel overwhelmed, the first thing that I do is call my mom. Like, she's my rock. I tell her everything. We have a very, very open relationship. So I decided at that moment that it was the best time for me to give her a call, and I called her and said, look, Mom, I'm pregnant. Hamza and I took 4 tests, so there's no way that it could be a false positive or anything along those lines. And at first, I'll be honest, she was a little bit frustrated. My mom is only in her 40s right now. My mom got pregnant in her final year of university with my sister, and then I followed not even 14 months later. When it came to her career, she took a very different path than what she had wanted when she was younger, and she just knew how hard I had worked, and she didn't want me to live that life, so she was a little frustrated with that. But after the conversation with my mom, it went a little rocky, and I was a little more emotional than I was before. But she called back not even 5 minutes later, and she had expressed how excited she was, that she's gonna be the youngest, coolest grandma, and she was so excited that she finally has an excuse to go to Disneyland, because my sisters and I we never wanted to go, and that was always her dream. So she was so excited that she finally had someone to go to Disneyland with, which is a little weird, but that explains my mom's personality. She's very fun-loving, easygoing, but also very driven, and she's a very intelligent woman. My mom said that I wouldn't be able to tell my dad over the phone that I was pregnant because it would break his heart if he didn't find out in person. So that night, Hamza got dressed up head to toe. Like, he was wearing a full-on dress shirt, dress pants, leather shoes. Like, he was so ready to go, and like a man, tell my dad that I was pregnant and that we are ready to become parents. So I'll actually insert a photo, because I took a photo of Hamza before we went home. We actually drove at 11 o'clock at night, about an hour away from where we were living, just so that we could tell my dad in person. So yeah, I'll insert a photo now. And yeah, so that's what Hamza looked like, and I was fully in sweats. My hair was a mess. I had been crying, and I just was emotional. I already was emotional because of the hormones, and then just that news on top of it just made me like extremely emotional. And then I was worried about how my dad was gonna react. I am a huge daddy's girl. Like, I just thought that he might be a little less excited than my mom, because my mom, like I said, she took it pretty easy, but at the same time was a little rough at first. So I was really nervous to see how he would react, and Hamza was as well, because my dad he's not a scary man, but he looks like he's a scary man with a very deep voice. Like, I always tell him he needs to get into voice acting, because when you hear Morgan Freeman, he sounds like he's Morgan Freeman's son. His voice is so deep, and he's so muscular, and just everyone was always scared of my dad growing up, but he is the most gentle, loving human being ever. So I'll actually insert a photo of what my dad looks like currently, because he does not look like he has a grandchild, and he does look like he probably could have broke Hamza in half for impregnating his daughter. Anyways, so we drove an hour all the way home with emotions in the car, and Hamza was so determined and driving in his little getup, and I was just sitting there like, okay, I really, really hope my dad's not mad. I hope my mom didn't spill it to him beforehand. And luckily, when we got home, my dad didn't know. He was not expecting us home, so we sat in the driveway for a little bit, to be completely honest, before we came inside. My mom was expecting us, but my dad definitely wasn't. And when we came in, he was like, oh, you guys are here. He was obviously excited because we were coming to visit. But we kind of cut straight to the point. I was really eager to let him know. And so Hamza sat down on the couch and looked him in the eyes and said, Chelsea is pregnant, and I am more than prepared to make sure that this is not a mistake, that everything goes well. I will take care of her financially, physically, mentally, and yeah, so he just assured him that he is ready for the commitment of being a parent and I will not be left alone. And basically my dad was like, okay. That was his response. He was like, okay. He did say afterwards that it is a big change and he knows that we are ready to face every single challenge that comes towards us. And he said it's not something that can be changed or undone. So we had his, not approval, but we had his support. One of the biggest concerns after we found out that I was pregnant was how we were going to manage financially, since both of us were extremely independent. I've been very financially independent since I was about 13. My parents are always like on my butt about being a responsible, mature adult, and so I thank them for that, because I would not be half as responsible and level-headed if it was not for them. So yeah, so Hamza and I at that point both were taking care of our rent, our groceries, phone bills, visas, my books, my tuition, everything. So it was just a big thing for us to try to kind of include a baby into all of the other finances that we need to take care of. It was amazing because right after I found out that I was pregnant, Hamza was so determined to find a job that will pay him so well that when I'm on my maternity leave that he'd be able to take care of every single one of our expenses and we'll have plenty left over. And he ended up getting this amazing job. So it kind of helped that we had that extra push to be even more financially independent than we already were. And yeah, so it turned out really well. One of the biggest helps while hiding my pregnancy was actually having one person that was not Hamza or myself know about the pregnancy, and that was one of my very, very close friends. So it was amazing having her around, because when Hamza had to go home and work, he would leave me sometimes overnight and she would come and lay in bed with me and rub my back, and she just always helped take care of me. If I was throwing up, she would help me. If I left class, she would take notes for me. She was amazing, like all the way through my pregnancy, and still she is an amazing, amazing friend, and she's a big part of Anderson's life and my pregnancy. For the first 3 months, I wanted to stay very quiet because there's always complications, concerns, things that can come up, because it is such a vulnerable point of your pregnancy that it's a little rushed if you say something at that point. And especially being my age and in the community that I was in, I did not want everyone knowing my business. I'm always, like I said, a very quiet, reserved person, so for everyone to know that I was pregnant before I was even showing would just be a little more overwhelming than what I could handle at that time. So I actually, after the first 3 months, decided to come clean about it because I was starting to show. I ended up making a Facebook status over Christmas break when I was at home so that my friends and family and classmates and everyone would see and understand what I was going through without needing to know every last detail. I just wanted to put it out there. So I do have some tips in case you do find yourself, or a friend of yours finds yourself in the same situation. It is very different being pregnant in university than it would be in your regular life when you're probably 25 and actually have a full-time job and people accept you socially for being pregnant. It was extremely important for me also to make sure that all my professors knew that I was in the situation that I was in. So I let all my teachers know that I was pregnant, even though I was not physically showing, because the morning sick was horrible. I would leave in the middle of class. I didn't want to risk having to walk out in the middle of a test because it did get that bad at times. And also too, I had many appointments that I'd actually have to go back to my hometown for because I did not trust the doctors on campus. I had a horrible experience with them, which I probably will talk about in another video. It ruined my life. But yes, so I was constantly going back and forth, and I just needed to make sure that my time was balanced out evenly. I wasn't falling behind in class. I had to maintain the average that I had already and keep my GPA well enough that later on in life I'll be able to get a great career. A lot of my professors were extremely supportive. I was on a first name basis with all my professors, and that helped out so much for me. It was also very important for that because it helped me avoid stress on so many levels. They were extremely supportive, male or female, of the situation that I was in, and it was very important for me to talk to my guidance counselor as well to make sure that all my classes were in order, that I was ready to graduate, because the last thing I would ever need is to find out while I'm pregnant that I'm gonna have to do an extra semester later on because I missed a class or something. Like, you need to just make sure that all your credits are in line. It's so important. It was extremely hard to maintain friendships in the first 3 months of my pregnancy when nobody aside from my one really good friend knew, because most of the other students and my friends that were at the same age as me, they were doing normal things that university students would do, like going out and drinking, going to bars, being in areas that a pregnant woman really wouldn't want to go. So I did decline a lot of invitations to go out with friends or just be social, which did take a big toll on me too, since I was so hormonal and emotional, and I just felt like a huge outcast, and it was extremely hard to settle in at that point. After I started to show, it was very different. A lot of people did stare. I knew people would make comments and have judgment, but having Hamza there for me, living with me, it was an amazing support system, and having my close friends as well. They were all so excited for me and so proud of me to see that I could balance school and a relationship. It is very important to keep a good daily routine and stay as active as you can, because it helps not only through your pregnancy but also in your labor. I did try my best to eat very healthy. It was hard since I had cravings of like a full-grown 300-pound man, probably. My pregnancy ended up being amazing. I ended up graduating with honors, thankfully. The last couple months of my pregnancy were so much different because I had finished school. There was no papers, no tests, nothing like that that added any of the extra pressure onto me. So I just got to relax at home while I worked as well. Since I did work while I was in school the entire time, I balanced school, work, appointments, all of that. It was just a lot. It was a big change coming back home and having my family to take care of me and Hamza and my friends. It was amazing, although my labor was once again absolutely horrible. And this is Anderson. For all of you that don't know, he was the one that was waiting to make his debut the entire time while I was studying, vomiting, and everything else in between, with the help of Hamza. Once again, if this video gets at least 75 likes, we will be posting we will be posting my labor horror story, so don't forget to leave a like. Also, comment and subscribe, and follow us on our social media, because you will know then and there before. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you guys in our next video. Emerson just doesn't care at all. I think he's gonna feed his cookie to the dog.